You're looking at a photo of routine airport cargo. A long metal crate, wrapped and strapped down, wheeled toward a waiting aircraft. Check the date, December 2024. That crate isn't cargo. It's a reconstructed 20-meter section of a Boeing 747 fuselage, kept under seal by British investigators for more than 30 decades. This is what's left of Pan Am 103, the plane that carried 259 people out of London, bound for New York, 4 days before Christmas, 1988. According to the UK's official crash investigators, 39 minutes into that flight, at 31,000 feet, the aircraft broke apart over a small Scottish town called Lockerbie. Everyone on board was killed in the breakup and impact. 11 more died on the ground when the burning wings came down on their street. 270 people from 21 countries gone in seconds. Officially, still the deadliest terrorist attack in British history. For over 3 decades, the world was told this case was closed. One man convicted, one government blamed, one chapter finished. But right now, more than 36 years later, that same piece of fuselage is crossing the Atlantic again, this time as evidence for a trial almost nobody expected. And the closer investigators and journalists have looked at the evidence that convicted the only man ever found guilty, the harder it's gotten to call this story finished. Today, I'm walking you through exactly how a device small enough to fit inside a radio brought down a jumbo jet. How investigators built a case out of a scrap of circuit board and a shopkeeper's memory. And why, decades later, that case still isn't settled. Piece by piece, like it's happening right now. Rewind to 4 days before Christmas, 1988. Pan Am 103 wasn't one flight, it was two, joined together. A Boeing 727 fed in from Frankfurt as Flight 103A. At Heathrow, 47 of its 89 passengers changed planes, boarding a Boeing 747 called Clipper Maid of the Seas. Nearly 19 years old, one of the first jumbo jets ever built. 243 passengers took their seats for the transatlantic leg to New York, alongside a cabin crew of 16. 35 of them were Syracuse University students flying home after a semester abroad. In the rest was Bernd Carlson, the United Nations Commissioner for Namibia, on his way to sign the accord ending decades of South African rule over the territory, a ceremony scheduled for the next day. In the cockpit sat Captain James Macquarie, 55, with almost 11,000 flight hours behind him, alongside First Officer Raymond Wagner and Flight Engineer Jerry Averitt. By every measure, this was an experienced crew on a routine holiday flight. What most of those passengers didn't know, 16 days earlier, the U.S. Embassy in Helsinki had received a call warning that a Pan Am flight out of Frankfurt would be bombed within weeks. Officials later called the tip unconnected to what actually happened, but it existed on record before a single one of them boarded. If you are the kind of person who notices details other people skip past, stick around, hit like, subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? It helps this reach more people. At 6:25 that evening, 25 minutes behind schedule, Flight 103 lifted off from Heathrow. Nothing about that delay looked unusual to anyone on board. At 18:58, Captain Macquarie made routine contact with Shanwick Oceanic Control. "Good evening, Scottish. Clipper 103, we are level at 31,000. 31,000 feet. Cruising speed, nothing unusual." 4 minutes later, the aircraft crossed into Scottish airspace over the Solway Firth. At 19:02:44, Controller Alan Topp transmitted the flight's clearance for its crossing to New York. There was no reply. According to the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch, at 19:03, about 38 minutes after leaving Heathrow, under a pound of plastic explosive detonated inside a suitcase in the forward cargo hold. The nose section tore away within roughly 3 seconds. It struck one of the engines, then landed miles from the main wreckage. The rest of the fuselage kept falling, breaking apart as it fell, until the wings, still carrying close to 100 tons of jet fuel, came down directly on a residential street called Sherwood Crescent. The impact tore open a crater more than 150 feet long. On his radar screen, Alan Topp watched Flight 103's single signal fragment into 4 returns, then 5. He tried repeatedly to raise the aircraft. Nothing came back. Every one of the 259 people aboard was killed. On the ground, 11 residents of Sherwood Crescent, including a family of 4, died within seconds. 270 people, 4 days before Christmas. Debris fell across more than 845 square miles of the Scottish countryside. In under 3 minutes, one of the busiest transatlantic routes in the world had gone completely silent over the south of Scotland. What was left behind would take investigators years to piece back together. Within hours, Lockerbie, a town of about 3,500 people, became the largest crime scene Britain had ever seen. According to the FBI, more than 5,000 responders took part in the search. Police, soldiers, mountain rescue teams, volunteers from the town itself. They recovered 319 tons of wreckage, scattered across more than 845 square miles of countryside. Kenneth McQueen, Lockerbie's local doctor, spent those first days out with police search teams. His wife later recalled that they went out desperately hoping to find someone alive. There wasn't anybody. What the search parties found, scattered for miles around the town, was almost unbearable in its ordinariness. Suitcases, Christmas presents still wrapped, a 2-year-old's dress, a pilot's uniform. Once police confirmed an item held no forensic value, it still had to go somewhere, so the people of Lockerbie decided it would go home. Local women, Elma Pringle, Josephine Donaldson, Moira Shearer among them, began washing, drying, ironing every piece of recovered clothing so it could be returned to grieving families across 21 countries. It took them more than a year. Other residents ran volunteer canteens around the clock, feeding search teams, sitting with responders who needed a few quiet minutes before going back out. Decades later, the FBI would say this response reshaped how the Bureau itself treats victims of crime.
But underneath all of that grief and quiet kindness, the investigation was only just beginning. Buried in the debris, fragments no bigger than a fingernail, were the pieces that would let investigators trace this bombing back to the men who planned it. That search would take years. It would turn Lockerbie into the largest criminal inquiry in British history. Piecing together what happened took years. Every fragment recovered was X-rayed, tested for explosive residue, logged into Holmes, the Home Office's large major inquiry system, a database built for exactly this kind of investigation. For more than a year, investigators believed they already knew who was responsible. 2 months before the bombing, West German police had arrested members of a Syria-based militant group led by Ahmed Jibril, seizing several bombs, including one hidden inside a Toshiba radio-cassette player, nearly identical to the type later used at Lockerbie. It looked like an open-and-shut case. Then, in June 1990, everything shifted. British forensic investigators linked a tiny circuit board fragment found in a forest east of Lockerbie, smaller than a child's fingernail,
to an MST-13 timer manufactured by a small Swiss company, MEBO, in Zurich. MEBO's own records showed the company had built a batch of these timers for order to 2 named officers in Libyan intelligence. Around the same time, torn fragments of clothing recovered from the wreckage, a shirt, tartan trousers, a baby's jumpsuit used only as padding, were traced to a small shop in Malta called Mary's House. Its owner, Tony Gauci, told investigators he remembered selling those exact items roughly 2 weeks before the bombing to a customer he believed was Libyan. Between one piece of circuit board and one shopkeeper's memory, the entire investigation shifted continents from a Syrian-backed militant cell to Libyan intelligence. On November 14, 1991, nearly 3 years after the bombing, the Lord Advocate of Scotland and the U.S. Attorney General jointly announced arrest warrants for 2 Libyan intelligence officers, Abdelbaset al-Megrahi and Lamin Khalifa Fhimah. For years, nothing happened. Libya refused to hand over Megrahi and Fhimah and kept denying any government role in the bombing. In March 1992, the UN Security Council answered with Resolution 748, grounding Libyan flights abroad, banning arms sales to Tripoli, cutting diplomatic staff. 19 months later, Resolution 883 went further, freezing Libyan assets overseas. For the rest of the decade, Libya lived under an international siege with no clear end in sight. The deadlock broke because of one man neither government controlled, Nelson Mandela. In 1997, 3 years after apartheid's government fell, Mandela flew to Tripoli to meet Gaddafi in person against the open irritation of the U.S. State Department. He believed Libya was being singled out, and he wanted this settled by trial, not indefinite sanctions. Mandela sent his most trusted advisor, Jakes Gerwel, into secret negotiations and pulled in Saudi Arabia's Prince Bandar bin Sultan to help broker terms Gaddafi could accept without losing face at home. By August 1998, Gaddafi agreed on 3 conditions: no police interrogation of the suspects, no pursuit of anyone else in Libya, and a trial before Scottish judges alone, no jury. In March 1999, Mandela flew back to Tripoli with special UN clearance and announced the handover was days away. On April 5, 1999, Megrahi and Fhimah were flown out of Libya into Dutch custody, delivered not to Scotland, but to Camp Zeist, a former U.S. Air Force base outside Utrecht, just placed under Scottish legal authority for the length of the trial. More than 11 years after the bombing, the men accused of carrying it out were finally going to face a courtroom. But the case about to unfold there would rest on something far smaller than anyone expected, a scrap of circuit board and one shopkeeper's memory. On May 3, 2000, after 11 years of waiting, the trial finally opened inside a converted school building at Camp Zeist. Prosecutors told the court they'd built their case on 4 physical clues: the reconstructed wreckage itself, pointing to a bomb hidden inside cargo container AVE 4041, fragments of a Toshiba radio-cassette player and a brown Samsonite suitcase, charred scraps of clothing traced to a small shop in Malta called Mary's House, and a nail-sized circuit board fragment from a timer built by the Swiss firm MEBO. Over the following months, the court heard from 235 witnesses and reviewed thousands of pieces of evidence.
At the center of it all was Tony Gauci, the Maltese shopkeeper, who testified he remembered selling a customer resembling Megrahi trousers, a cardigan, an umbrella, and a baby's jumpsuit, roughly 2 weeks before the bombing. Clothing investigators later found packed around the bomb itself. Prosecutors also pointed to Megrahi's rank inside Libyan intelligence and a fake passport he used the same day. The defense pushed back hard.
They argued the bomb could just as easily have started its journey at Heathrow, not Malta, and that a decade-old memory shouldn't be enough to convict anyone. They tried to steer the judges back toward the Syrian-backed militant cell investigators had first suspected. On January 31, 2001, 3 Scottish judges delivered their verdict. No jury because Libya had demanded none. Under Scots law, they even had a third option, not proven, but didn't need it. Lamin Farnif Khalifa, Famia, was acquitted outright. Abdelbaset al-Megrahi was found guilty of 270 counts of murder, sentenced to life with a minimum of 27 years before parole. For the families, it finally looked like an ending, but almost immediately, questions the court never fully answered started working their way back to the surface. For years, the case looked closed. Then, in 2007, after a 4-year review, the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission handed Megrahi something almost no convicted murderer ever gets, a second chance to appeal, because it believed a miscarriage of justice may have occurred. What the commission found was damaging. Tony Gauci, the shopkeeper whose memory had convicted Megrahi, had actually been interviewed 17 times by police, and his story had shifted more than once. Records also surfaced showing the U.S. Department of Justice had quietly paid Gauci $2 million and his brother Paul another $1 million under a program that rewards witnesses for testimony, payments the defense was never told about at trial. Then, in September 2008, Megrahi was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer. Doctors gave him roughly 3 months. In August 2009, with that second appeal still pending, the one built on the Gauci findings, Megrahi's lawyers withdrew it. Days later, Scottish Justice Secretary Kenny MacAskill granted him compassionate release anyway, saying Scottish values demanded mercy even for a man convicted of killing 270 people. Megrahi flew home to Tripoli to a hero's welcome, still insisting he'd had nothing to do with the bombing. The backlash was immediate. FBI Director Robert Mueller, who'd led the original investigation, wrote MacAskill a scathing letter calling the release inexplicable and warning it makes a mockery of the rule of law. The 3 months doctors gave Megrahi turned into 33. He died in Tripoli in May 2012, still a free man, still proclaiming his innocence, and the evidence that might have cleared or convicted him all over again went with him unheard. For a while, that seemed like the end of the story. It wasn't. For nearly 30 years, investigators knew a third man might be out there. Buried in the original case files was a name, Abu Agila Mas'ud, a Libyan intelligence officer suspected of building the actual bomb, but nobody could locate him. Then, in 2016, American investigators learned something extraordinary. After Gaddafi's regime collapsed in 2011, anti-government fighters had captured Mas'ud themselves. In September 2012, a Libyan law enforcement officer sat him down and recorded an interview in which, according to U.S. prosecutors, Mas'ud described building the device, setting its timer to detonate exactly 11 hours later, and handing the suitcase to Megrahi and Famia in Malta. He reportedly said the operation had been ordered by Libyan intelligence leadership and that Gaddafi personally thanked him afterwards. It took the U.S. Justice Department until December 2020 to unseal charges, the 32nd anniversary of the bombing. Attorney General Barr called it a milestone 30 years in the making, but Mas'ud was still in Libyan custody, already serving a sentence for unrelated bomb attacks during the 2011 revolution, and the U.S. had no extradition treaty with Libya to bring him over.
That changed in December 2022. Armed men seized Mas'ud from his home in Tripoli and handed him to U.S. authorities, a transfer Libya's own prime minister later admitted his government helped arrange. Human Rights Watch called it a legally murky handover, with no Libyan court ever reviewing it. Mas'ud appeared in a Washington, D.C. courtroom days later, and in February 2023, pleaded not guilty. More than 30 years after Pan Am 103 went down, for the first time, someone accused of building the bomb was finally standing in an American courtroom to answer for it. That crate we opened this story with, the one wheeled onto a cargo plane in December 2024, wasn't a coincidence. It was the reconstructed fuselage of Clipper Maid of the Seas, formally handed over from Scottish custody to American prosecutors as evidence for exactly the trial we've just walked you through. The case against Abu Agila Mas'ud, the man accused of building the bomb. That trial still hasn't happened. It was supposed to start in May 2025, then April 2026. At the time of writing, jury selection is scheduled for August 24, 2026, though the court has warned that could still slip into 2027. The reason keeps coming back to one document, Mas'ud's alleged 2012 confession taken by a Libyan interrogator known in court only as Jamal, while Mas'ud was held in post-Gaddafi custody. Mas'ud's lawyers say it was extracted under duress. Prosecutors call it the backbone of their case. The original recording of that interview has reportedly gone missing, leaving the court to decide, based only on notes and memory, whether any of it can even be used. So here's where this actually stands 36 years later. One man convicted, later freed, dead before he ever fully explained himself. One suspect on trial right now in a Washington, D.C. courtroom over a confession nobody can fully verify. And 270 families who have spent more than 3.5 decades being told again and again that the truth is almost within reach. Maybe it finally is. Or maybe Lockerbie stays what it's been since 1988. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. Hit subscribe, drop a comment with what want covered next, and we'll see you in the next one.